Hi, it's Dr. Jenny. Thanks for joining me on this edition of our Health Hacks podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about empowering menopause and some essential things you can do to optimize your health through this transition. So this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and it's near and dear to my heart because we help a lot of women navigate this, but I am also right in the throes of this personally. I just had my 50th birthday. And I'm doing this thing that if you're listening, you're probably curious about it, or you're doing it, or you're having problems navigating it, or anything else. And here's a few things that I think you need to know to make yourself feel better about all of this. Most of the focus on women's reproductive care is focused around childbirth and those years, having healthy pregnancies, starting your family, those types of things. And while I think those are super important things for us to focus on as a medical community, it's almost like women get forgotten. They're just told, oh, menopause is just part of life, suck it up. Here's the thing, we're all going to do it. And the other thing is you spend more of your life not in that reproductive cycling phase than you do in it. So there's a lot of time that women are in this phase and they're wondering, like, why do I feel bad? What can I do? So let's talk about some of the things that you can do. I think honest discussions are great. One of the things that we see helping women in this phase is fiber. So that means eating lots of fruits and vegetables, lots of healthy grains that maybe it's quinoa, maybe it's chia seeds or flax seeds or something like that, some nuts, things like that, because that helps with your gut health, keeping the microbiome balanced. It helps reduce constipation and some of these other digestive complaints that women see throughout menopause. And of course, fiber is important to all women, but it's especially important in that time frame. And a good goal is 25 to 30 grams a day as a woman. Most people get between 10 and 15 in that range. So you're thinking of doubling what most people are doing. It takes focus. And if you start to pay attention, we use something called Carb Manager. It's a free app you can download on your phone, and it'll track that for you, along with like your carbs and your proteins and things like that. That's another thing that, speaking of foods that really help, higher protein. As women start to, first of all, when we hit about 35 years of age, we start losing muscle mass just naturally. That's kind of just how it is in life. It's easier to build muscle until you hit your 30s, and then there's changes in your body that make it harder, and we start to actually have to fight for that muscle that we have. And so one of the things that we can do is up our protein intake. I notice a huge change in that for me, the way I feel. I like to run. I like to lift weights. I feel stronger. I notice my body composition is better. I feel like it's less fatty and more muscle if I consume a higher protein diet. And I think a good goal is 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of your ideal body weight. So for example, if you want to weigh 120 pounds, that's a great weight for you. You want to be eating about 100 to 120 grams of protein a day. And that, again, is going to take focus. In order for me to hit that goal, I have to use a protein shake of some sort. And I also have to eat a lot more protein than is normal and natural for me. Again, when we look at what most women are doing, they're somewhere in the 50 to 60 grams a day range. That's just not enough. So when you do that, I think you'll start to feel like you'll just start to feel better. Your body composition will feel better, and all of those things. Again, if you're not tracking that, you can check out that Carb Manager app. We love that, and we use it with a lot of people. Another thing that you're going to notice is really good is weight-bearing exercise. So not only because we're losing muscle mass, but then especially when we're postmenopausal and we don't have the estrogen we used to have. Estrogen plays a big role in maintaining bone density. That's why osteoporosis tends to show up on the other side of menopause. It has a cardioprotective effect also, which means it helps protect you against heart disease. So when you lose that estrogen, there's some things that can happen. But in the bone density world, one of the biggest ways to fight against that is to use weight-bearing exercise. So walking or running or things like that are load-bearing cardiovascular, they're okay. And we need to do those because we need to keep our endurance up. We need to, for cardiovascular reasons, to just general mobility, get those steps in. All those things are great. But we really need to do something that is a focus on weights. If you're new to this and you want to do things like body weight exercises, air squats, lunges, push-ups, those kinds of things, it's a great start. But really to see the max benefit here, you're going to want to graduate to as heavy of weights as you can use. And I know you're sitting there listening to me, and if you're in my age category, you remember back in the day where you were conditioned to believe that a low-fat diet was good, which it's totally not, and that weights, you just need to use these little 3 and 5 pound dumbbells, and we could do light weights, or else you're going to turn into this huge Hulk Hogan style, muscle figure. And that's just simply not true. With very, very rare exception, women just don't build like that with muscle. But you want that muscle. You want that stimulation on the bones to keep them healthy and strong. So don't be afraid to really, really hit the weights hard. And I am talking about hundreds of pounds if you can, deadlifting. And now, of course, have somebody help you so this is safe and all of that. But and even if you're just starting and you're working on 10 pound and 20 pound and 30 pound dumbbells and things like that, that's a huge win. You will notice your body composition is so much better. You'll notice some strength and definition, and most importantly for your bone health, that's just a really great thing. That's one of the most consistent and helpful things that we can do. Okay, a balanced diet. So of course, again, this is good for anybody at any stage of their life, but we talked a little bit about the higher protein, the healthy fats. So the protein is almost like if you start with the protein and you say, I'm going to eat, say, 100 to 120 grams of protein a day. That'll be somewhere around 30-35% of your diet probably. If you're, say you're eating 1,600 calories a day and you eat 100 grams of protein, that's a fourth of your diet. That's 25%. So if you eat a little more than that, it goes up from there. But and then you fill in the gaps there with fat and carbs, because those three, fats, carbs, and protein are your 3 macros, and they make up a pie, and everything has to fit into one of those buckets. So if you're doing 30% protein, then you have 70% left that you can split between your carbohydrate and your fat. And some people are going to do better with higher fat and less carbs. So those are the people that do really well on keto. So they're getting their 30% protein, and then they're getting another 60% fat, and then only 10% carb. And they feel great doing that. Their digestion, their gallbladder, all that is happy with that. But then there's some other people that, that's a little tougher for them. They don't do that as well on that much fat. So they can tolerate a little more carbs. So they're going to do a little more carbs. So they're going to have a little more produce in their life. They're going to have just some of the things that someone who is following a higher fat, lower carb diet doesn't have room for. Things like bananas and potatoes and beets and things that are really healthy but higher in carb. And we navigate this with a lot of people, and there's no one right size answer for anybody there. But something we can all agree on is make the protein, get yourself to that, to the right amount of protein for you. It's going to depend on your weight and all of that. But then a couple of other things that we can agree on are minimize processed foods, sugar, refined carbohydrates, things that come in bags and boxes and cans and convenience, drive-through, fast food restaurants. Stay away from those. Eat whole foods. Eat a lot of vegetables, primarily fruit. And again, you're going to vary your fruit content based on higher or lower carbs. Focus on the healthy fats like the nuts, the seeds, the avocados, things like that. Eggs, that's good. There's a nuance there, and that's why we do coaching with people, because they're trying to figure out, maybe they tried a keto diet and they didn't feel great on that, and they need to play around a little bit and up their carbs a little, and they need to know how to do it and all of that. So, but there's a range, and that's just some ideas in that range. The next thing we need to really make sure we're doing is have adequate vitamin D. That's really important for bone health. It's important for the immune system. It's important for mood regulation. And many of us are deficient in vitamin D. It's such an easy thing to do on a blood test. It's part of our panel that we run on everybody. And it's one of the most important things you can do at this season in life. Mood issues really start to show up in menopause too. And a lot of people don't understand there's a connection with vitamin D and mood. Of course, there's hormones and all of that. You want to get some sun exposure because you get some vitamin D from that. So don't be scared to get out there in the sun, and it's so good for everything. Don't get sunburned. Don't stay out there all day. Don't slather yourself in baby oil like maybe you did when you were a teenager. Maybe I'm not the only one that did that. But just get out there, get a little healthy sunshine and fresh air. But you'll probably also need to do a vitamin D supplement. Most of the people we see do, even if they're outside a lot. And especially in the winter months. Fatty fish, egg yolks, those are also things that are natural food-based sources of vitamin D. And then let's talk about blood sugar. Okay, this is huge for everybody, but blood sugar dysregulation starts to really show up around menopause. Your estrogen makes your insulin more sensitive. I'm going to say that again. Estrogen makes your insulin more sensitive. Insulin is the hormone that helps reduce blood sugar. So if you eat something with a bunch of carbs or a bunch of sugar and it goes into your bloodstream and there's a bunch of sugar running around, your pancreas has to make insulin because that blood sugar has to have a bodyguard or an escort to get into the cells. So insulin is that bodyguard or that escort. So the more sugar you're floating into your bloodstream, the more insulin you have to produce. Well, your insulin works better when you have more estrogen. It's more sensitive. It does better. When you start hitting menopause and postmenopausally, when your estrogen is really, really low, your insulin has to work harder to do its job. That's why people start to go, well, I never had blood sugar problems. And all of a sudden they told me I'm pre-diabetic and I'm having these mood swings and I'm crashing and my energy doesn't feel consistent and I need a nap and I'm all over the place. I have irritability. I have food cravings, those kinds of things. So now it becomes let's look at blood sugar, and some of the ways to help with that are to eat, small regular meals throughout the day that are a good mix of protein, healthy fat, complex carbohydrates, and they're low glycemic. So things that aren't going to shoot that blood sugar up. That plays in really nicely to that conversation we were having about not doing a lot of processed, refined carbohydrates, because those are the things that shoot your blood sugar up usually really fast. So, keep the carb load each time you eat pretty small. So eat some protein, eat some healthy fat, have a little bit of carbs with it, but don't just sit down and eat like a bagel by itself is terrible, because all it is just a huge shot of carbohydrate, or a Coke or a candy bar or something like that. A lot of people are really bad about breakfast. They do like a muffin or something bready and carby, and it doesn't have much protein or fat or nutritional value, and they shoot their sugar up real fast in the morning, and then it comes barreling down when insulin gets secreted to pump it into the cells, and then they feel like they're really hungry again two hours later, and they grab the coffee or the candy bar or something like that, because their body's in fight or flight mode, because their sugar just bottomed out because they shot it up so high, and then they had all this insulin coming down to counteract that sugar that shot into their bloodstream. So we do a lot of work around that, counseling people on that. We have a lot of our patients wear a continuous glucose monitor, and then we help them track, like, okay, look at what's happening here. Okay, let's change what we're doing, and let's do that. And then the last thing I want to mention about when we talk about menopause is, don't be scared to have a conversation about hormones and what they're doing and whether or not you need some help. The conversation about hormone replacement therapy is so emotionally charged, and a lot of people, especially if you're a little bit more natural minded or alternative, like you're just a little bit more health conscious, you're like, oh, I would never take hormones. They raise my risk of breast cancer and all of this other stuff what is coming out in the research, and I am researching this all the time, is that a lot of those studies that are saying, oh, your risk of developing breast cancer, they're misleading at best. That there is a time and a place for women to get some help with. I like bioidenticals versus synthetics, and that's a whole different conversation, and we've done some episodes on that. But I think every woman is entitled to a conversation with somebody that understands this and can help them, and so they can make up their mind. So if you want to have that conversation, a lot of times we don't need to resort to hormone use, because all of the other stuff that I just talked about, if you actually do that stuff, it really changes the game, and you feel so much better, and you're like, well, I feel better. I don't need the hormones. But sometimes you do, especially if you've had a hysterectomy, and for some reason, like, all those things are just yanked out all of a sudden, and it throws your body into chaos. And so I will use those with people, and I will have an honest conversation and give them the chance to, hey, here's the pros of this, here's the cons, and why don't you make the decision that is best for you? Because there are some benefits to it too, that it's a good thing to talk about all of it. So anyway, I hope you found this episode super helpful. If you want to connect with us, in the description, there's a way to do that. We call it a free discovery call. You can talk to us. We'll tell you what we do, how we approach this, how we get started. So you can make a decision whether you want to get some help. Okay, thanks for listening, and have a great day.